The political panel all-stars up shortly, Whānau. But first, this week's one-on-one in 10 with New Zealand education academic Professor Welby Ings on his brilliant new book, The NCEA Changes and the Role of Public Education. Kia ora, comrade. Welcome to the show and thank you for being available to the Fourth Estate. Your democracy is grateful.
Kia ora, mate.
Professor Welby Ings, at a time when we have seen mega strikes around the country from teachers and huge changes with NCEA mooted, you have an incredible book out on education called, got it here, Invisible Intelligence, Why Your Child Might Not Be Failing. This is the second time you've appeared on our show because I was so impressed with your book. I wanted you back on in light of the current debate swirling around public education because I think you have so much to contribute to this discussion. Welcome back. Firstly, how has the reaction to your book been?
The truth is, every couple of days you get an email from somebody who tells you a deep story about someone they love who is succeeding now, but who had a really hard time. And in truth, there's a lot of self-help books out there. I wanted to put a book that would make research put its arm around your shoulder. You actually use evidence to go, the difference in your child is actually their uniqueness. It's not their negative. It's not their deficit. And so it's had a very human reaction. I mean, it's had wonderful reviews and stuff. I think they released the audiobook today,
right.
And because they always wait a few months.
Yeah.
So it's done. I think it's done well. A lot of speaking engagements.
Sure.
I guess it's doing what I hoped it would do. It would give heart that would make people say no to things.
Many moons ago, I actually trained to be a teacher and I have a graduate diploma in teaching, but didn't progress it because I didn't feel the educational environment would allow me to teach the way I wanted to. After reading your book, I have found a newfound faith in what could be done with public education. So let's kick it off here. What do you mean by invisible intelligence?
So I believe all people are neurodiverse. It's not a belief. It's just fundamental. We're sitting here and people are listening and from 10 minutes of this discussion, we will all take away different emphases because we read information differently. And that'll be based on what we've got in our backpack and our experience, what's front of mind at the moment. So if it's evident that all humans are diverse, you have to have an education system that is sophisticated enough to deal with that. So you can't bring in systematic and assume that replaces rigor. It doesn't. So what I tried to do with the book was look at some of kinds of thinking that don't sit in the spectrum of what we traditionally consider intelligence, but actually are very high performing levels of intelligence, very high. Sometimes they're hidden in what we call artistic thought or non-linear thought. Sometimes they even get turned into problems because they don't fit neatly into an under-resourced education system. But I love my job. I love my job. And I get to work with extraordinary thinkers. Most of them are uneven. Most of us are. That's part of the beauty of living in a society. We have uneven people and collectively we gravitate towards what's going to be effective. And I just thought there has to be something more tangible to talk about in a recognizable way, about ways that people think that sit outside what is measured by a very, very crude and under-critiqued ruler.
You talk about a very revealing moment in the book where you took a team of academics out on a hike as a team-building exercise. There was an injury, a lot of blame for getting lost, and the bus driver, with very little formal education, ended up showing more intelligence than the entire group of academics. Can you expand on that example?
Yeah, at the heart, the punch of that story was that the academics called him clever rather than intelligent. but he actually showed embodied intelligence. So we got lost. Like, I'm a Kiwi. This was in Scandinavia.
Yeah.
And I should have known better because I love the bush. I love tramping. And I took these group of, they're actually philosophers.
Yes.
And there was some trouble, and these were not bad people.
Sure.
But they'd reached a situation where their environment had become toxic and they weren't good with each other. And so I said, look, rather than a wall with sticky notes and everybody reading back, let's go for a day's tramp. I had to explain what tramp was, the Kiwi concept. And so there was this walk through the forest, and we took lunch. And so the idea was that in each section of it, you would be walking with sometimes next to somebody who you'd attacked as a scholar.
Right.
But you would be listening, and there would be a question, and you would have to be able to talk back to the group about what that person believed about that thing. And so it was getting people to listen, but actually it was getting people to help each other, to actually understand we're all human beings. And beyond writing poisonous things about each other in passive-aggressive ways in academic texts, we actually need each other. And so it had all gone pretty well until we got, there'd been a slip, and we lost the track, and it was just like everything a Kiwi should not have on their CV,
Yes.
And one of the academics injured herself, and we couldn't go back, and we couldn't find the track. And in the end, it was so we got lost, and it was the bus driver who managed to work out by looking at the top of the canopy that there was a road somewhere bulldozed, and he got us out, and they'd been he had a bit of a dodgy sense of humor, let's be honest. He'd not endeared himself to academia with his mosquito jokes. But at the end, his ability to read the world, but also to read the emotion of a fragile group who, while they could process knowledge in some ways, actually had very undercooked skills in how to deal with other human beings, philosophers,
right.
how to deal with other human beings in a stress situation. And I just loved the guy. I just thought he was amazing. I was deeply respectful and grateful, respectful of him and grateful. But he nailed for me again the fact that we create a kind of invisible class system around intelligence.
Yes.
And there are often people who are profoundly intelligent, but because they don't sit inside certain boxes, we will label what they do as clever rather than intelligent. But actually, when you look at what they're doing, how they can read something and put together a solution, that they have the ability to solve problems in ways that other people can't.
Professor Ings, your argument just in the book is that educational philosophies and pedagogy that prioritise time-stress testing of students for quick problem solving using a myopic focus on reading, writing and arithmetic is inadvertently failing many kids. Why do you think that, especially when the Education Minister seems very focused on entrenching that educational style in NCEA?
Look, we're much more sophisticated than the human mind is something far more sophisticated than something that can be measured by the ability to read and write and process knowledge numerically. We're much more sophisticated than that. And so you need much more sophisticated way of understanding. And it's true back in the days, if we're haunted by a fragile past, we thought that you could release people into the world being good at maths, reading and writing. If you were to take our new generation coming through and put them into the world, having passed their literacy and numeracy tests, you'd be throwing them into a meat grinder. They wouldn't have the ability to discern between what is valuable and what's not valuable. They wouldn't know how to work with complex systems. They would simply know a system of pattern finding and calculation and the ability to read and write. And so we have to, it's our ethical responsibility as human beings to insist on something more sophisticated in an education system than a preoccupation with tired and limited interpretations of what it is to be literate in the world.
You make the point in the book that a public education system is there to serve the interests of all the students.
Educationally, and went into a much more socialized context-driven education system. So
It
moved,
did.
and it flowered through the 60s and 50s, 60s, 70s. It wasn't perfect, but we have one of the most flexible education systems in the world. And things like NCEA and people being able to teach, having high teacher agency, where people can bring their gifts in and work in unique ways with kids. It became a distinctive part of an education system that is also distinguished by the fact that it has one of the largest state education systems in the world.
Yeah.
So it's only 3.6% of New Zealanders go to private school. Only 3.6.
Wow.
So in the OECD, that's 18. It's 18%. Tiny. Most people here go to this extraordinary, complex and flexible system called a state education system that is not broken. It is not broken.
Exactly.
But it is quite unique. And when we accept without critical questioning dead cats thrown on the table by people who say things like, oh, the literacy is terrible, or maths is really bad, or the examination system's wrong, they disconnect their statements from the actual research they're referring to because the research is invalid or poorly put together.
Yes.
And people get afraid because one of the most frightening, well, most evident ways of manipulating a group of people is to create a catastrophe where there isn't one, and then you can wheel in a fundamentalist answer.
It's manufacturing a crisis, isn't it?
It manufactures a crisis. And so, here's some things that a lot of people might not know. Our university system is ranked fifth in the world, behind the countries that are in front of us, Sweden, Switzerland, the Netherlands, and Hong Kong. Now, I have trouble with rankings, but these are where they were looking at not just the performance academically and citations, but also the quality of education experience.
Sure.
So here we have this country that has grown. We have a brilliant early childhood too.
Yes.
And we also have brilliant secondary and primary. We have a very good but an unusual system that is ideologically positioned very differently to, if you use your reference, I would call it Taylorist mentality, which is one that assumes that it's the role of education to train people to be good workers. So it's not. It's the role of education to help people live the most effective life.
Right.
Part of that means getting a job, but
Yes.
part of it also means living in a world where lies are polished to such an extent that you can consume them and get yourself hurt.
Yes.
So we have this, and we've given rise to people like Sylvia Ashton Warner, educators who shook the world.
Yes.
But this very humanist approach to education, which has at its core, everyone is a unique learner, and educators, it's their role to grow those people in the most fertile soil. And the way you do that is you don't wheel in systematized limiting systems on them. You make room and then you resource.
You also explore the importance of the relationship between student and teacher with a beauty and compassion that is genuinely moving. The political right seem to look at teachers as taxi drivers in an Uber world and have convinced themselves we can replace that cost with AI. But your argument about the importance of that human relationship really challenges that cynicism. Where do teachers find the emotional energy to invest in those students when public education is so under-resourced and their pay conditions so bleak?
I got saved because of a couple of teachers, and I see it happen over and over and over again. And I see it's my role to try and do the same thing, on standing on the shoulders of invisible giants to try and do the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's a duty of care. That's how I see teaching, as a duty of care.
Totally.
And you have to look after teachers, because they are investing way beyond what anybody who believes that you can have a teacherless curriculum, that you can just have something which is a sealed body of knowledge, and then teachers are reduced to disseminators and assessors of knowledge, completely misses what the sophistication of learning is.
Exactly.
So when you have a look at the meta research, it shows that The two biggest influences on a child's success at school. The first one, the big one, happens outside the school gate. That is the environment they come from.
Sure.
It has the biggest one. The second one is the relationship with the teacher.
Yes.
The relationship with the teacher. And at the moment, we see a crisis happening. And it was interesting that even the Teachers Council of New Zealand talked about this. While we're talking about money, there is a deep issue that sits alongside it. So at the moment, educators who are well educated and spend years in a system refining those skills are being subjected to a system that takes away their professional ability
Yes.
to exercise their skills.
Yeah.
And so the idea is they're going to wheel out these things and we're going to do standardized tests, and your job is to teach the package this way and then report on that.
Yeah.
And you just get rid of your education system. Just make a mill. But, we can't. And that's why teachers push back. I mean, that's why parents push back.
Yes.
We have to push back because we have a duty of care to a nation we love.
Amen. Finally, Professor Ings, I believe public education is one of the few silver bullets we have as a society. And your book shows us how a different valued public education system could work. And you do that with wit, intelligence, and a deeply powerful conviction. For parents who are worried their kids aren't succeeding educationally, what advice would you give them?
At the end of the book, I had trouble finishing the book. I didn't know how to finish it up. So I stood back, and I think there are three things that absolutely will count. One is love. Now, I know that I'm not trying to be marshmallow here. By love, I mean belief, letting someone know that you truly believe in their ability to get themselves to a horizon beyond the one that they are. And that's not saying you're awesome when they're not. It's got a toughness to it too, but when you have lost belief in yourself, when you get to the end of an education system and you walk through the gate and your mana is in tatters, you need love. You need love wrapped around you that says there is a better you. There is a better you. And the second one is time. So formal education is poorly resourced with time. You put 28 kids in a class with one teacher. It doesn't matter how you reword it.
Right.
You can't do it. You can't do it. So the time that you spend with kids, your child outside of school, is hugely important, because we actually do most of our learning outside of school. We learned our first language outside of school. We learn how to persuade, how to huge skills outside of school. In fact, our ability to read is largely developed outside of school.
Yeah.
It's refined outside of school. So there's time, and the other one is work. It's hard. Learning is difficult, and none of us are equal gods. We are all uneven, so we recognize the unevenness. We build on the strengths and find how to fill in the gaps around the other things and go, and that is a wonderful way of being in the world, because we're not all going to get 4 subjects out of 5 and stand up there going, I'm an equally balanced automaton. No, I'm a human being, and a flawed human being in a flawed world. I'm uneven and capable of greatness.
Thank you, comrade. Thank you so much. Any discussion on public education that doesn't include you isn't worth having. Folks, buy his book for Christmas, Invisible Intelligence, Why Your Child Might Not Be Failing. It's out now in all good bookshops. Thank you, Professor Ings.
Thank you, mate.